So welcome to our Female Voices series. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sim. I'm the head of content at Unlimit. Could you please start us off with an introduction about yourself and your career pathway so far?
Yeah, of course I can. Hi, Sim. It's lovely to meet you, and thank you very much for having me on. Look, I'm Harshna Cayley. I've got around 20 years experience in the payment space. I'm a mother of three. I'm a D&I advocate and champion. And I guess I'm a bit of a disruptor. I'm a bit of a change agent. So that probably sort of sums me up.
Amazing. I think there's so many people now that are super passionate about D&I, myself included. So I love to hear that. So currently in your role, so you're Managing Director of Payment Products Gateway at Barclays.
Yep.
Something that I would really love to know is what drew you into the payments industry and how did you get your foot into the door and get started? And over the years, how have you worked to uplift yourself within the industry to the amazing position that you're in now?
Think about my career and where I started. I started as a software developer, and I guess, you know, having had the opportunity to work at a number of brands, a number of organizations, I've done a lot of roles, and I've had the ability to kind of work my way up in like during the course of my career in being in those organizations, and that's been, you know, a fabulous journey for me. If I think about payments and the role it plays in society, it's got such a big purpose. You know, payments is ubiquitous, right? It's the thing that connects commerce and experiences. It powers the economy. It drives financial inclusion. So payments for me isn't just a day job, right? It's a passion. And I guess over the last 20 years, you could probably describe me as a bit of a, you know, a payments nerd, a payments geek, but also a problem solver. I really like to make the complex simple. And there is a lot of complexity in the payments space. I'd say that having worked at Visa for a fairly long time, that's where I grounded my payments knowledge. And then every organization I've gone into, I've been able to ground that knowledge even further, learn even more, because there's so much disruption, there's so much innovation, there's so many challenges to solve. So that's, you know, probably, you know, like a description for how I got into payments and how I've worked my way up.
No, I love that. And I think all of us that are in any sort of payment space are all nerds and geeks in our own way. So we're all with you. And I absolutely adore that description because I think it's such a vast industry. There's so much to learn. There's so much to do. So
Yeah.
it's amazing that you've put yourself in a position where you're willing to just sink your teeth in and drive change. It's phenomenal. And it's going to help a lot of people because we're seeing so much evolution in the payment space with financial inclusion, and it's really important. And with the addition of like your D&I experience and your passion for that, it's just going to create like exponential change. It's incredible. But one of the things that we've noticed predominantly being in STEM, finance, payments, fintech, is there's a huge absence of women present in our industries, and particularly in senior positions. We have so many talented women with so many skills, but working as a individual in the industry for so many years, what obstacles have you seen women facing in the payments industry over the years, and how are you seeing that shift over the more recent years?
Look, I think that, and I'll lean on first-hand experiences that I've got over the last 20 years or so, but also others around me, right? Whether it's male, female. I'd say that there still remains a number of challenges, barriers, and obstacles for inclusion and equity and equality. Some of it is down to unconscious and unconscious biases, which we're all born with, right? We're all a product of our upbringing, and we have certain beliefs and, you know, certain things that, you know, we kind of grow up believing. And I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to break those biases, and to become consciously aware that we all have biases, right? Whether they are conscious or unconscious. And I think continually working on that and kind of relearning, re-educating yourself is really important, because I think that still remains a barrier, particularly in the workplace. I think another area is around confidence. I think women typically tend to lack confidence in a male-dominated environment, or particularly in STEM roles, where there's definitely still a difference in terms of that balance between male and female, in terms of, like, you know, the amount of roles that are available, the opportunities that are available. And I think that that can hamper confidence amongst, like, females in society. So I think there's still some work to do around, you know, building confidence. I think there's still work to do around allyship and sponsorship and mentorship, because that's really important to drive that balance and that, you know, equality and equity. And it's really important to, you know, have a network of sponsors. It's really important to have allies who speak for you when you can't speak, or who represent you when you're not there, who break down those biases when you don't necessarily pick up on them. And I think that's really important. Those are still barriers that exist, certainly in my opinion.
No, I completely agree with you. And I think we're seeing so many organizations now, whether they are groups within existing organizations or actual, like, female bodies that are running specifically to support and uplift women, because so many people, some people are very confident. They can turn around and say, well, no, I'm a woman and I am in this room and I have my voice. But there are some people that boast numerous skills, but don't necessarily, like you say, have the confidence to stand up. So it's amazing that we have those corridors and those channels opening up, because it's essential. We need to have that opportunity, and we already have the skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's so important. And I think that the role of, like, just that awareness, having more self-awareness as a female, that, you know, in any given situation, you have the competency, you've got the skills, you've got the experience, and therefore you should feel absolutely confident about whether it's an opportunity or role or a project that you're either pitching for or leading, and not feeling like, well, you don't necessarily cover all of the boxes, right? Because, you know, different from a, you know, when you think about males from their perspective, they may have certain gaps in terms of competence, but they kind of dial up confidence, and therefore in certain situations they do better than a female would. And we're seeing, you know, we're seeing a lot more balance now, right? Or starting to see a little bit more balance, particularly, you know, amongst, like, female football, and just leveling out through other, you know, through other ways, to start to see more of that kind of female talent coming through.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's so important, and it's amazing that we're starting to see it. There's still a lot more change left to develop and to see coming through our industries. But even the fact that we are now being able to get our foot into the door, I mean, something that I often speak about as well is, particularly, like, with women, but also women of color, is something that's really, like, close to my heart, being like a woman of, like, an ethnic minority myself. So I think seeing all these organizations, these groups, and women just uplifting other women is just incredible. It's such an amazing journey to watch. Working as a female leader with, as you said, like, decades worth of experience in the industry, what advice would you like to share to other women, or even tools, who are trying to work their way up the ladder in the finance space? And is there anything that you wish you knew earlier on in your own journey that you would like to share now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if I had my time again, I would consciously work on my personal brand. And whilst I've spent a lot of time over recent years developing my brand and being very clear about what I want to be known for, both externally and also, you know, within the organization that I work for, if I had my time again, just being a lot more aware about what I want to be known for, what makes me me, and really embracing my background, and, you know, that diversity, that difference that I had versus some of the other kind of colleagues or people that I interact with. And just being a bit more proud about that, right? Being proud about the fact that, you know, I historically have come from a low socioeconomic background. Yes, you know, I come from, you know, an Indian family with, you know, certain kind of traditions, and a certain way of living, certain values, certain mindsets. to then like being in a Western society, plus being a female, right? And I think that, you know, being consciously aware of those differences that make me me and make me authentic and define my personal brand, that I think is something that, you know, as a tool I've used more and more over the last few years. But I wish that I'd thought about it more and I was more proud about like that diversity of background and like thought process, because I think that would have helped me around confidence. It would have helped me around challenging status quo. It would have helped me in like senior, like in a senior audience, to be able to kind of lean on some of those differences that I have and not feeling like I've got to conform to what is regarded as normal, right? Because there is no normal, right? We all need to sort of celebrate the background that we come from. So I think that's certainly, you know, like an advice that I would give to, you know, anyone listening to this. And it's not just tied to females. I think that's kind of just, you know, across the board. I think that the other sort of tool or advice that I would give is, and certainly something that I use, is the power of sponsorship. And allyship is so important. And again, like as I started my career, I didn't think much about that. You know, for me, it was about doing the best that I could do in the job that I was doing, and taking a much more theoretical approach around building my confidence, which is, you know, how do I study and how do I learn so that I feel confident in payments or in finance or in the domain that I was in, and not necessarily thinking about, well, what sponsors do I need to be able to progress and to be able to develop and, you know, open up new opportunities or tackle challenges that I haven't tackled before or seek inspiration. So the power of sponsors is so important to learn from, right, and to get that inspiration. And so is allyship and sisterhood, right? You know, I talk about this concept of sisterhood, and I think it's really important for females to have each other's backs when it comes to equality, when it comes to equity, when it comes to inclusion, when it comes to, you know, having a seat at the table. And why would you want to be the only female to have a seat at the table? Surely you'd want more and more females, right? You'd want a bigger presence there. And it's about driving balance, right? And I think that, you know, by having that kind of allyship and sisterhood means that you're not feeling threatened or competing with other women. And I do see some of that happening. And I think that it's such a shame when that happens, because the power of, you know, females in having that allyship and having each other's back, the kind of multiplier effect of that is really big, because that drives a better balance and high performing teams and better commercial outcomes and a better culture and an inclusive environment. So I see the power of personal brand, sponsors, allyship as really important. And those are some of the techniques and tools that I've learned over the years and what I use as I work alongside, you know, a range of different people from different backgrounds.
Thank you for sharing that. That was incredibly powerful. And I think there's so many things I could pick apart from that. And I don't want to, because I think you summarized it amazingly. But I agree. And I do think, especially in the perception of no one will better understand the experience of women than other women. And that's why it's so important. We do support each other. We do uplift each other. And it's okay to rely on each other. I think we've all seen at some point that there's a bit of like a competitive streak. And I think that's because women have been so attuned to the fact that they have to fight so hard for the positions that they're in.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get lost in the cloud of that, and you do see that sort of like streak. But I think we have seen an evolution where now people are forming, like you said, that sisterhood and professional bodies of women that are able to group together, upskill each other, push each other like in amazing ways, like nothing like negative. And I think that's so important. And I, like on a personal level, like I'm so happy to hear it really touches my heart as you speak about embracing like your roots, as well as identifying yourself as an individual and stemming all of those different areas together, because you're a woman, you're a person of color, you have heritage, you have your own passions, a career that you want, a family, all those things, and they all formulate who you are. And embracing that is a difficult pathway, and I think most of us spend our entire lives on that journey, but the fact that even on it is so commendable. And I just think it's worth pointing that out because it's beautiful to hear.
Oh, thank you, Sim.
My pleasure, my pleasure. But moving on slightly, something that I wanted to ask, particularly in light of what we've just spoken about, is what do you see happening in terms of opportunities for women in the payments industry for maybe like the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that the next five to 10 years, the market, the payments industry is moving at rapid pace. There's so much disruption, innovation. There's other drivers that this industry are influenced by, whether it's, you know, the economy and like political landscape, you know, the ESG agenda and diversity, equity and inclusion. But I think for women specifically in this space, you know, I'd love to see, and I do hope in the next 5 to 10 years that we see more female entrepreneurs, right? As there is more, you know, that as payments evolves, as there's more accessibility and equality and balance around opportunities, I'd hope that we see more and more kind of entrepreneurs within the female space. I'd love to see more and more females amongst leadership and management roles as well. You know, like more board, you know, more boards filled with a balance of female versus male voice at the table. More opportunities for women to really balance out those leadership positions that have historically always been sort of filled and consumed by males. So, you know, that is an area that I'd love to, and I expect to see some transition over. And then I'd say lastly, and I'm sure there's many, is definitely more female presence amongst STEM. So if we think about the opportunity in engineering and AI and data and technology, and those spaces, all of which are really important in financial services and the payments ecosystem, it's so important to tap into both male and female at a very early age to essentially, you know, encourage them to pursue opportunities within STEM, because a lot of the future roles, a lot of the demand will be in that space. And today we see an imbalance amongst like females versus males within STEM roles, STEM opportunities. And I'd hope and I expect to see in the next 5 to 10 years that there'll be more and more females, you know, specializing in STEM and pursuing opportunities in STEM, which is essentially the future of, you know, financial services, payments, commerce, like everything that we touch and do. So yeah, that's probably what I would say are the opportunities for females over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. I agree. I think it's an incredible opportunity. And, you know, one of the things I often speak about is the fact that the way that we can achieve that is encouraging girls to enter education subjects that they're interested in from early on, so that they have that opportunity when they get to the right age, that they can pursue a career, they can explore those options. And I think we are starting to see that sort of shift now. More girls and women even who are retraining are quite comfortable and confident in exploring that. So hopefully, fingers crossed. So I would like to sort of change it up slightly from my usual format, and I would like to pose an open question to you instead of rather than a direct one. So I'll just say a statement, and if you could finish it with whatever you feel is most appropriate. So payments are done right when
it creates an open, inclusive ecosystem that fosters financial empowerment, promotes economic growth, powers commerce, and enhances the overall well-being of individuals and communities.
Well, damn. that was iconic.
I did have to do a little bit of thinking beforehand, but yeah, I like that question. It was a nice question.
Thank you. That was a phenomenal answer. That was amazing. All I can say to that is I agree completely. That's amazing. Thank you for summarizing that so perfectly. So how far off do you think we are from achieving that? And what do you think needs to be done to bring that vision into actuality?
So, look, I'd say that we still have a lot of work to do to achieve that vision. Obviously, the vision I laid out is one that is all encompassing, right? It's sort of describing perfection. And I don't think we'll ever get to a state of perfection, right? It's always going to be an evolution and it's work in progress. And I think where we are today, there's still too much complexity in the system. There's still a lot of friction between commerce and payments. There's still a lot of friction around financial inclusion and particularly providing accessibility to underserved communities. I think there's still a lot of friction for small to mid-sized businesses to really grow and scale. It can be a difficult ecosystem to navigate and to get the help that you need to do all those things. And so I think those are some of the challenges, which means that, you know, we still are some way off achieving that vision. If I think about what some of the things that need to be embraced or what needs to be done to address that vision, it will be, you know, things like we need to invest in the digital infrastructure, you know, not at an individual or a banking level or a, you know, like I think it needs to be at a macro level, you know, the digital infrastructure to power the payments and the commerce ecosystem is a really big undertaking. And you need the collaboration of so many players to make that happen, whether it's the government, whether it's regulators, whether it's banks and financial institutions, whether it's the fintechs, whether it's technology providers. So there's so much collaboration that needs to happen to really invest in that digital infrastructure. But there's also, you know, I'd say other areas that need addressing around promoting financial education, financial awareness and that financial inclusion. And that starts at a very young age, whether it's in schools and whether it's, you know, certain communities that are underserved. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And yeah, I mean, I'd say that, you know, like the digital infrastructure, leveling the playing field so it is inclusive and it creates that ecosystem. And then that collaboration with so many people, so many players within that value chain and that ecosystem is so important.
Absolutely. I think you touched on essentially the life cycle from literally from what needs to be done presently, future, and even in supporting and uplifting people from much younger years, which is something that is so key, particularly in our industries where everything evolves and transitions so quickly. And everyone has to be able to move with that. So people that are able to prepare themselves better at young ages will be able to sort of like digest things. And I think at a global level, there's so much work to be done, but absolutely inclusion is the end game in the world of payments. And I think that's beautiful. So we are moving on, sadly, to our last question. We've sped through it. I can't believe how quickly it's gone by. But the last question I had to ask you was, what are you most excited to see in the payments landscape in the next 5 years?
Well, I mean, I think the next 5 years, you know, for me, I'm really excited to see the convergence between commerce and payments to be even much more embedded than it is today, where, you know, payments is it just happens, right? Like it happens today, but it's 100% embedded in every interaction, in every platform that consumers live and are in. I think the other areas around contactless and mobile payments, I think that has already been such a significant trend. We've seen so much movement in that space, particularly since COVID. Clearly, it's here to stay. It's here to really kind of like there's so much more innovation that will be seen in this space, whether it's accepting payments or interacting through wearables, whether it's using your mobile device, whether it's using an all-in-one app to do everything from social to payments to commerce to whatever it might be. So I think that there's going to be more innovation we're going to see around contactless and mobile payments. I think the other one is around AI, virtual reality, augmented reality, and really, you know, the metaverse and what we can see there. Obviously, we use it very much so in the gaming sense, but I think that what's starting to become very real is, again, that convergence of physical payments, virtual payments, the meeting of commerce and digital commerce, and that all coming together again in an ecosystem that's powered by data, that's powered by, you know, AI, and how that will really drive this ecosystem. And I really do think over the next 5 to 10 years we'll see so much innovation in that space. I think we're going to see more innovation around authentication and biometrics. And then lastly, I'd say open banking and really accessibility of what open banking brings to financial institutions, but anyone that operates within the space of payments and financial services and that ecosystem. So, you know, I expect to see more innovation and more use cases being addressed as part of the open banking agenda.
It's such an exciting time. As you say that, it just reminds you how much is happening, and it's such a phenomenal time to be in the world of payments.
Yeah, it really is. I think that payment, and that's why, if I go back to kind of a question that you asked me around what brought me into payments and how have I worked my way up, there's never a dull moment, right? There's never a challenge to solve because it is hugely fast paced. It's continually evolving, and as a consumer, I can relate to it. As a professional, I can relate to it. And not only me in the generation that I'm in, at 43 years old, but so can my 15-year-old daughter and my 9-year-old daughter and my 13-year-old daughter, right? They can all interact with it. And it's here to stay, right? It's going to have a really, really significant role. It will continue to power the economy, commerce, everything that we do.
Absolutely. Harshna, thank you so much for making the time to speak with me today. It's been absolutely incredible. It's a phenomenal addition to our Female Voices series. So I'm from the bottom of my heart and from Unlimit, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been brilliant to have this conversation with you, Sim. Some really thought-provoking questions there from you. So thank you for that. It's always good to keep me on my toes. Yeah, thank you very much.